everybody, welcome back to Geezers Struggling with Technology. Even the pets like it. So we're gonna dig into this hive. One tip that I always recommend to beekeepers is before you start monkeying around with this hive stuff, it's good to spend a few minutes just being around them. See what kind of mood they're in. These bees are in a fine mood. Earlier this morning I was stung on the lip. Can you still see that? That was from those bees down there. They seem to be in a different mood. But these bees are coming and going. They seem to have a pretty good population. They are bringing in lots of different colors of pollen. There's nectar flowing from the maple trees and I can't even remember. I've been on the road for a long time, a little fried. I haven't been into this hive since, I believe it was October of last year. I came through the winter really well. Give you some little starting points. Oh, hello. It's a good example. I'm going to take off my wedding ring. I know somebody who's been stung on this knuckle with their ring on, and then it swells up and then you can't get your ring off and you have to have it cut off. So I always take rings off to do a hive inspection. Going in barehanded because it's spring, and if your bees can't be worked barehanded in the spring, they got a bad attitude. So, got the smoker. Megan got that going really well. She's a wizard at that. I'm terrible at it. I'm going to give them just a little puff of smoke to get their attention, settle down the guard bees. So if one of those guard bees thinks that I'm kind of a problem and they want to sound an alarm, they make this smell come out that tells the other bees, hey, let's be mean to Phil. But this time of year, it should just be a single puff of smoke or so on the entrance to the hive, and then I'm going to maybe not come back to that again. The brick comes off, and now the veil goes on. I don't want to be stung on the lip again. Bees like to pay a lot of attention to your face because they know that's in your brain. You're supposed to be scared of yellow and black things buzzing around your face. So, hive tool. If you're a beekeeper, you gotta have a good hive tool. Don't get the thing at the paint store that looks a little bit like that. You need a nice rigid thing because all this stuff's gonna be stuck together with propolis. Hi bees. This is my first beehive inspection of the year, and I usually by this time it's what, the second last day of April? Usually by this time I've been into a hive a few times, but the weather's been so chilly. This is the first 60 plus sunny day that I've had. So we're going to take off the inner cover. It's often covered with loads of bees. Don't worry about it. Put it out of the way. I'll go back in the hive later. I don't know what that is. Something moldy. Into the neighbor's yard. Sorry, Royce. Usually when I'm inspecting a hive, I'll take off all the boxes on the top until I get down to the bottom box. I don't know what you're seeing out there. Am I gesticulating like a madman? But because of the time of the year, I'm pretty confident that most of the activity is happening up here near the roof, because through the winter they were eating their way up through their honey stores, and now they're probably near the top running out of honey, but now there's nectar coming in, so they're back in cycle. But just gauging by where the majority of the bees are hanging around, I'm going to guess that these two frames are going to be where the queen is, where most of the biological activity is happening. We don't know until we get in. Bees can land on you. It's okay. She's just checking out my thumb. Although you are kind of in the way. So I like to go in starting with the second frame over. I'm sure there's nothing to be learned on this frame. Late summer, we might look at that and see if they're making a honey wall against the exterior. But I'm going to start on frame number 2. So they've stuck everything together with propolis. It's their all-purpose adhesive. It's glue to stick things down. It's spackle to smooth over things that are rough. It's caulk to seal up any gaps that would allow air to flow in. Well, that's interesting. There's our queen. Can you see the queen? She's marked with a little green spot on her thorax. Anyway, when I get back to my computer, I'm going to look at this and figure out if that worked. But the fact that she's laying all the way over here on the perimeter of the hive is interesting. That's the east side of the hive. I would expect them to be on the west side at this time of the year, but bees never do what you expect. So I'm going to be very careful with this frame because it has the queen on it. Anyway, for those of you who didn't see, she's here. She's working around. She's laying eggs. Much of this oval has capped brood, which are the developing pupa that are going to be hatching out sometime in the next 12 days or so. There's open larvae, the little white worm looking things which you probably can't see on the camera. We're going to work on getting some close-ups as we learn the ins and outs of this technology. There's a little bit of pollen stored over here, some bright orange, probably from the crocuses. We got a lot of crocuses in this neighborhood. I thought maybe a bee was hatching out. So I don't ever want to put the queen down outside of the hive.
Can I zoom in with it?
I don't know.
What do I do with this?
Megan's joining us here on tech. If you can, there's a, see, you can't preview on that, so no.
No
Short
preview.
answer.
Okay.
Are we okay in the broad view, or you just need some close-ups?
You can't see that at all. I mean, it's like, what if I go really close?
Whatever.
There's no way to zoom.
We're learning as we go. I hope these videos are going to improve as we go along. I don't want to put the queen down near the ground, so I'm just going to pick her up with her wings, and I'm going to drop her down on the other side of the hive, where we won't be there until later. So now I can not worry about damaging my queen or losing her onto the ground. That frame is going to get set aside, so I've got now some nice working space here, so I can pull out the next frame and go in. One thing I'm doing this time of year is I'm going to count frames that have brood on them, because it's going to give me a sense of the strength and vigor of this hive. So that's 1 down there. This is 2 right here. Baby bees. I love seeing baby bees. I'm going to come around. Hey Megan, open the door. Is that interesting? Apparently Megan has returned to work. She's got a day job. So in addition to trying to quantify the amount of growth that this hive has experienced, I'm also looking for signs of health, which you probably won't be able to see, but I'll say it with words and we'll understand that way. Capped brood is in here, where they've covered over the larva that's going to develop into a pupa, and it's going to grow into an adult bee, hatch out. Those have a nice little bulge to them, so they're fat, they're well-fed little larvae that are going to grow into healthy bees. I always look at my young bees, and I definitely am not going to be able to show you that. There's a very subtle difference. There's one bee here who's a little bit smaller than everybody else, and she's much fuzzier than everybody else. Her thorax is still really fuzzy. Even her eyeballs are kind of hairy, because that hair is going to kind of slowly rub off as she moves around among these bees as she grows. But when they're only a day or two old, they're just extra fuzzy, and so I always look closely at those newly hatched out bees to make sure that they've got fully developed wings, fully grown abdomens. Each of those things, if they're not what I expect, is a red flag in terms of their health. What I've yet to see on any frame is any stored honey. So if I don't see some of that as we get toward the other side of the hive, I'm going to put a feeder on this hive so that they don't starve. Weather's still kind of touch and go this time of year, particularly this year. Man, it's been cold, hasn't it? Good beekeepers always put their hive tool away from themselves. They don't gesticulate with it and risk poking themselves in the eye, injuring themselves or the people around them. So we're at our third frame of brood, and pretty significant brood. It's, you know, brood from 3/4 to maybe more of the frame is covered in brood. That's a mess of baby bees who are going to be born in the next week. I'm going to come in tight because there actually is a baby bee being born right now. I have no idea how close I need to get. Where to go? You know, you take your eye off things for 1 second and then they disappear. She's a baby bee in my own shadows here. Anyway, like I said, if you've got the kind of bees we want to keep, you should be able to touch them. Bees are always touching each other, so they're used to that. They don't usually react. Here we go. Again, in my own shadow. How do I do that? See there? Right at the corner of my hive tool, there's a bee hatching out. I'm gonna come in super tight. If any of you are out there commenting, I got nothing. I don't know what you're saying, so don't try talking to me. When I go silent, that's because everything's going really well. I have seen that they've got some honey up here in the corner, a little bit of capped honey, a little bit of new nectar, which is exciting. When the sun comes out, the plants are producing plenty of nectar. So there's food for them to eat on those days that they can get out and fly. But once it drops down into the low 40 degrees again, they're stuck at home eating the food from last year. So this is now frame number 4 with plenty of capped brood on it. Bees hatching out on this side. Take my word for it. A little bit of pollen stored. Everybody looks nice and healthy. And I hope you can tell that these bees are really well behaved. Sometimes people watch me work in a hive and they assume that I'm being stung and I'm just tougher than most people. Not even close. Believe me, you'll know when I get stung because I squeal like a little baby. Here we go. So we've now reached the perimeter of the brood nest. There's our queen again. She's a beauty. She's one of our Sopo Russians. Russian great something grandmother, but been mating in Portland and South Portland for a bunch of generations. She's nice and fat. She's a good egg layer. One thing to notice though, remember when I said I don't ever get the queen away from the hive? She doesn't want to go down. She wants to be on my finger. That was good video, right? My back to the camera. I'm like the Miles Davis of beekeeping. Little jazz joke for you kids out there. What I was going to say, this frame is not completely built out into comb. And our forecast is still for a lot of chilly temperatures. Bees have a hard time building comb in the cold. So I'm going to move this frame away from the brood nest and move a better frame closer to the brood nest so the queen has a better place to start laying. She can lay more efficiently. So I'm going to move one frame in a little bit closer. Put this one out a little further. They'll get to that as we get into May. We're maybe a week or two away from our major dandelion bloom. When the dandelions bloom, that's where things really switch into high gear here in Maine. That means bees are getting loads of nutrition, they start to make loads of new baby bees, and they start to think about reproduction and swarming. So this is what we call a honey wall. That's capped honey covering the central 3/4 of that frame. So that's left over from last year, the nice dark knotweed honey that we see here in Portland. I'm going to leave that where it is. Love having a honey wall. You know what? Changed my mind. A lot of beekeeping is about improvisation. For reasons I don't know, this hive is kind of focused on this side of the hive. So I want to center them and give them a little easier access to the resources around them. So if I take this honey and put it over on the other side, now it's going to be near where their brood is. And if it gets cold again, which it's Maine, it could be cold until June, July. We want it to be close to their food, because when it gets chilly, we don't want them to have to run through the chill to get to their food. The more stout honey wall out on this side, so now if they continue growing in that same direction, they won't run out of food. That first frame that we pulled out goes back in where it belongs. Again, everything's very sticky with propolis. So propolis, in addition to being their all-purpose adhesive, it's part of their immune system. It's antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal. So it keeps everything inside the hive very well sanitized. And we're all learning a lot these days about sanitizing our environment. So, hello. You can't see it, but there's a bunch of bees over here in my handhold, and I almost picked it up, and well, that would have been funny. Let's go down and see what's downstairs. Good population of bees down here. Can you see that? I don't know. I'm going to move that first frame out of the way. This is why the good hive tool is my favorite kind of hive tool. I can pry these out with that hook. $24.95 at the Honey Exchange. Product of the Kelly Beekeeping Company. Our partners in bee health. So to the non-beekeepers out there, that's cool, it's covered in bees. That's a few bees, but there's nothing on this frame other than a few bees. They're working their way. Eventually they'll get down here. The queen is gonna kind of start laying from the central core, that warm, wherever it was, heartbeat of the hive that's gonna survive through the winter time. And then that's going to start to grow as the queen lays outward in concentric circles in 3 dimensions. So it's an expanding ellipsis, an elliptoid. Is that what that's called? Can't remember. What's a 3-dimensional ellipsis? Ovoid. Ovoid space. I asked you like you can tell me. Oh. Quelle surprise. What a surprise for those of you who didn't take French in high school. This is a downstairs frame that's got, if you look, no, you can't see that. But look over here. You see that this is the bottom half of that oval. So it's expanded downward into the bottom box. There's a few eggs laid here in the center and on the perimeter, so the queen is starting to expand that brood nest and get it bigger and bigger. So we had 4 medium frames of brood upstairs. It's only about 1/3 of the frame, but that's telling me that this has got a pretty vigorous brood nest. They're growing well. And again, everything looks really healthy. Take my word for it. love keeping bees. Well, I always love keeping bees, but I love working bees in the spring and early summer the best, because the bees just don't care that I'm here. They have so much else to do. You may have noticed I have not picked up that smoker for a second time. Don't need it. These bees are, they seem almost happy for me to be here. That's fun. So this is now our second downstairs frame of brood. This has more than the previous, so we're moving into the larger part of that ovoid. One thing I'm going to do on my next hive inspection when I'm not distracted by you is I'm going to go through and make sure that I don't have too many old frames. We don't like frames to be in the hive for more than 5 years. They become a place where pathogens and pesticides accumulate. So this frame, for instance, says 2014 on it. So that's now in year 6. I'm going to cull that out and get it out of the system. But not right now, because it's got a mess of bees on it and it's got some brood on it. I think. No, it does not. Here's a trick. I'm going to move it to this first position, and the bees will be ignoring